My name is Tony Evers, and I'm going to be the next governor of the state of Wisconsin.
Not so fast. That's Scott Walker's message to the Evers camp after the tightest race for governor in more than 50 years.
And the difference is even more slim in the race for attorney general. So close, it hasn't been called yet.
This is News 3 This Morning.
Good morning and welcome to News 3 This Morning. 6 o'clock now on this Wednesday, November 7th. A lot to catch you up on politically, but we also want to get you caught up on a very chilly, again, cloudy sort of forecast.
Not great.
Yeah, we've been talking about all week how this colder air is going to move in for the end of the week. Well, it is here. Temperatures today are going to stay in the 30s. It's cold enough for snow across parts of central and northern Wisconsin. Nothing really showing up on the ground here in southern Wisconsin, but to the north there have been reports of light snow this morning. 33 now in Madison, down a degree in the Dells to 31. It's still 32 in Platteville. Janesville is actually up a couple of degrees to 36. Here's a look at our temperatures over the next 12 hours. Strong west winds again at 10 to 20 miles an hour, keeping high temperatures in the 30s today. Almost 10 degrees colder than it was yesterday. And I really think that wind chill factor will come into play today. It'll feel a little bit colder than that. Let's take a look at your first alert traffic maps this morning. There is an accident on the interstate. This is near Edgerton, I-90-39, the westbound side. The right lane is closed, and you can see that is causing some backups there. You might want to find another route if that is normally how you get to work this morning. Otherwise, here in Madison, no slowdowns just yet. A few brake lights showing up on the belt line at Stoughton Road. It is causing you to slow down a little bit on the interstate between Janesville and the belt line. You're adding a couple of minutes right now. I would imagine as traffic volume increases that those times will slow down even more.
I can certainly imagine with that kind of crash. We haven't seen one of those in a while, thankfully.
Not this early.
No, yeah, hopefully they can get that cleared up soon.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Hattie.
You're welcome.
6:02 your time now. We are still waiting to hear who will be the next attorney general here in the state. With nearly all precincts reporting, Democratic challenger Josh Kaul is leading incumbent Brad Schimmel by nearly 23,000 votes. That's less than 1% of the total vote here in Wisconsin. Both candidates made final remarks before calling it a night last night. Now, we are still waiting to hear from 2 precincts in Waukesha County and 1 up in Barron County. We're going to keep you updated on that race as those votes are counted today throughout the show and over on channel3000.com.
As we wait for that race to be called, we do have team coverage on some of the other major statewide races. Christine, going back to an even stronger Republican majority in the U.S. Senate.
But first, Josh Spreiter is live at the state capitol with the latest on the closest governor's race in decades. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, and this morning Governor-elect Tony Evers is thanking his supporters for their big support at the polls yesterday. But right now, the current governor, Scott Walker, has yet to concede. The race for Wisconsin governor came down to just more than 1 percentage point. Democrat Tony Evers defeated incumbent Governor Scott Walker with 50% of the vote. Nearly 31,000 votes separate the 2 candidates this morning. That is outside the margin needed for the Walker camp to demand a recount. This was the closest governor's race here in Wisconsin since 1960. It's also a historic vote, with Evers' running mate Mandela Barnes being the first African-American to be elected lieutenant governor in the state.
Though we won Wisconsin tonight, we do so with grace and humility and a lot of happiness, knowing we cannot fix all our problems with any single person or any election vote. The real work starts tomorrow.
It does not matter what zip code you come from or your family's income. Our mission is to make sure that Wisconsin is a state that once again provides opportunity to everyone.
Again, Governor Walker has not officially conceded this morning, and he didn't speak after the race was called this morning. Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish addressed the crowd early this morning, telling Walker supporters to expect a fight.
As many of you have seen all night long, this race is a dead heat. It is truly too close to call. And we are used to tough races here in Wisconsin, aren't we, ladies and gentlemen?
Again, Evers is beating Walker by an unofficial total of around 31,000 votes right now. To put this into perspective, back in 2016, Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by just under 23,000 votes. The numbers basically flip-flop there, not much of a difference. Again, these are just the unofficial results this morning. We're told that the results won't be certified, and we're not going to know more and if there's going to be a recount involved until later this week. Now, there was another historic vote yesterday. Tammy Baldwin defeated her opponent, Leah Vukmir, and Christina Laurie is following the latest on that historic vote this morning. Christina, good morning to you.
Leah and Danica, Senator Baldwin said that overnight 2 years ago, experts said this race was unwinnable after President Donald Trump won Wisconsin in the 2016 election. But this year, she defeated Republican Leah Vukmir by a 10% margin, 55% to Vukmir's 45%. Baldwin's campaign focused overwhelmingly on local issues like her fight against unfavorable regulation for the state's dairy farmers and her work to combat the opioid crisis. She's a proud proponent of Medicare for all and now serves as an example of a Democrat who can win re-election in a Midwestern swing state during the Trump era of politics.
In Wisconsin, we understand that America will only be made stronger when our political debate becomes more about issues and less about knocking each other down. And we truly must start working together to lift each other up.
Now, during the campaign, Baldwin well outspent Vukmir, raising $29 million to Vukmir's $5 million. Overnight, Vukmir thanked her supporters for not letting those numbers get them down.
While we may have been outspent, we were never outworked.
Even with Baldwin's win here in Wisconsin, Republicans' control of the U.S. Senate will grow by at least 2 seats and by as many as 5 seats. But it's important not to forget the history of this race. It's the first time ever here in Wisconsin that 2 women have been on the ballot for a U.S. Senate seat. And Senator Baldwin has broken barriers already as the first openly gay U.S. Senator when she originally won her seat back in 2012.
Election and lots of developing races still happening this morning, so we will keep an eye on those. All right,
many
Christina.
of the results still coming in.
Yep, yeah. Christina Laurie reporting for us this morning. Thank you, Christina.
And thank you to Josh as well. All right, Democrats have taken the majority in the House of Representatives, but Speaker Paul Ryan's seat in the 1st Congressional District will stay red. Ryan's former aide, Brian Stile, has defeated Democratic challenger Randy Bryce by a considerable margin, about 40,000 votes.
Now is the time to get to work. I will work to represent everyone, to represent you with dignity and honor.
On the campaign trail, Stile says his biggest goal would be to focus on the continued economic growth for his district. Now, the Wisconsin Senate will stay red. Republicans went into election night with an 18-15 lead in that House there. Republican Andre Jacques defeated Democrat Caleb Frostman in the 1st state Senate district. That's way up north in Door County, took that seat. And in our viewing area, Howard Markline defeated Chris Marion for District 17, and Marion was thought to have a chance to win that district.
Madison's clerk's office is counting at least 145,000 voters who cast their ballots this election day. That's a more than 92% turnout for pre-registered voters. Now, by comparison, in the last governor's race, turnout here in Madison was just under 70%. Despite a strong economy, most Wisconsin voters say they're concerned about the overall state of the country. That's according to an AP VoteCast survey that covered around 5,000 Wisconsin folks. That survey found roughly 6 in 10 of the state's voters described the country as on the wrong track. A top issue for voters in this midterm cycle was health care. About a third of voters said that was their primary concern. A fifth of voters considered immigration and the economy as their top issues. About 60% of voters surveyed said their feelings about President Trump influenced their votes.
There are some changes to talk about in Congress this morning, though. Democrats again will take control of the House of Representatives. This is the first time that's happened since 2010. They needed to gain 23 seats in order to take that control back. They took at least 26. Meanwhile, Republicans did hold the Senate, gaining actually even a wider margin there.
We do want to talk more about what all these election results could mean for the future of Wisconsin and for the country. UW-Madison political science expert Eleanor Powell is going to join us for that analysis. That's coming up next.
I know what our future holds for us weather-wise, at least. Hattie's got all the reasons to say boo this morning. We'll share what your hump day will look like and, more importantly, feel like when News 3 This Morning continues.
Good morning from the Hattie-O patio. It's definitely chilly outside this morning, and there's a wind to factor in as well, so you want to bundle up early today. Here's a look at high temperatures yesterday. We managed to climb into the mid and upper 40s across southern Wisconsin. The northern part of the state, though, stayed closer to 40 degrees, and you see Brainerd, Minnesota didn't even get out of the 30s. That's more similar to what we'll be looking at today. Our high temperature trend over the next 10 days is decidedly cold, even for November standards. Temperatures will top only in the 30s until we get to Friday of next week. That's when we finally get back to normal. So you better get used to these cold temperatures because they're going to stick around. It is cold enough for snow, and we are seeing some of that snow on the radar map this morning. Here across southern Wisconsin, it's just cloudy skies. All the snow has been reported in the northern and central part of the state. I think the furthest south report that I could find this morning was Marshfield with some flurries. Here's a look at temperatures, though. We have temps below the freezing point for much of northern Wisconsin. We're pretty close here in the southern part of the state. In fact, many spots are at 32 right now. Monroe over to Platteville and up to Mineral Point. You start the day at 32. It is down to 31 in the Dells. Madison's holding steady at 33 degrees. West winds, though, will remain strong through the day, 10 to 20 miles an hour, generating a wind chill in the 20s. And that's where our wind chills are this morning. It feels like 25 here in Madison. It feels like just 20 degrees in Platteville and only 21 in Mineral Point and Monroe. So you'll have to add an extra layer today. Here's a look at wind chills over the next 12 hours. I haven't used this graphic in many months, but I thought it was kind of appropriate to bring it back today. Wind chills are going to stay below the freezing point even into the afternoon. Here's a look at your future track forecast model. Now, we don't have any precipitation here in southern Wisconsin, but we do have clouds. Those clouds are going to stay put through the day today, topping with temperatures only in the mid to upper 30s. Some clearing is expected late today into tonight, and the winds will finally die down. But those two factors will lead to a pretty cold start tomorrow. Temperatures will be down in the 20s. Here's a look at that extended forecast then. It really doesn't get any warmer around here. In fact, late Thursday into Friday, we could see our first measurable snow of the season. Now we're looking at just minor accumulations. However, there's always a learning curve with the first couple of snowfalls, so you may want to set that alarm a little bit earlier Friday morning to account for the potential for some snow. Now let's get a look at your first alert traffic this morning with Josh Tim. Good morning, Josh.
Yeah, good morning. We're starting off the morning with some lingering delays in Rock County and I-90 westbound from a crash earlier near Edgerton at mile marker 165. The right lane was closed and is still moving slow through that area. Pretty quiet on the Beltline right now, though. Just a few brake lights showing up westbound near the ramps at Stoughton Road. Other routes here in Dane County, they're not looking too bad. Just a few slowdowns on Verona Road approaching the Beltline, adding a minute or two. No problems at all downtown around the Capitol Square and UW campus. Volume not a factor quite yet. And other main routes heading into Madison, they're moving along at the usual speeds right now with no major crashes or issues. With your first alert traffic, I'm Josh Tim.
All right. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Hattie. 6:15 your time now. We want to take some time to talk about what the results of this year's midterms mean for you.
Though a lot of results coming in, a lot of information coming at you. So we have asked political science professor Eleanor Powell from over at UW-Madison to join us this morning. Thank you again for waking up. I know it was a late night for a lot of people.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we wanted to talk first. We were talking during the break about polling and how a lot of people on both sides were going into this election saying, well, we don't trust the polls because of what happened in 2016. Right. And yet people may be surprised to see how accurate they are this morning.
That's actually the big surprise from last night. The pollsters were pretty good. At the races that were expected to be toss-ups, the parties pretty much split. And the same thing, the lean Democratic races, the Democrats won. The lean Republican races, the Republicans won. So everything was sort of basically as expected from last night.
I mean, the governor's race included here.
The governor's race included. They would sort of been flip-flopping sort of 1 percentage point in the polls, and it looks like that's basically right on.
What's really interesting are the margins, how tight they are in the governor's race, but even tighter in the attorney general's race. What do you make of that?
It's a little surprising. That's sort of one thing that sort of the polls didn't exactly say, although these lower profile races are sometimes hard to poll because voters have such little information about the candidates. The name recognition just isn't very high. It's not what voters are focusing on.
So, I mean, it's interesting, too. This is a situation, at least with the governor's race and potentially this race as well, that we're seeing the candidates here for attorney general, where we're going to see a recount here in Wisconsin. Right. I mean, what do you kind of make of that process, and what does that mean to voters?
So anything can happen in a recount. It looks like the margins are large enough that it'd be sort of surprising to find enough votes to overturn the outcome, because the quality of election administration in Wisconsin historically has been pretty good. So, you know, some votes could have been miscounted, something could have gone wrong. That's always possible, but it would be somewhat unlikely.
We say thin margin, we're still talking tens of thousands of votes.
Right, exactly.
Right. Right.
More than 1%, right?
Yeah, sure.
Let's take a look at the U.S. Congress now. As the polls anticipated, Republicans kept the Senate and Democrats took the House. Who's the real winner here, then?
Well, it's a little bit of a split outcome. I would say the big change is going to be Democrats having control of the House and what that means for the president's legislative agenda going forward, and the inevitable sea of congressional investigations we're about to see in the House.
There are so many implications with this, too, and I think, you know, maybe let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about the 1st congressional district here. I mean, were you surprised to see that stay red? Because, again, we were expecting a lot of Democrats to maybe come through in the House here.
It was a little bit surprising, although that's, again, what the polls had predicted, that sort of once Speaker Ryan dropped out of the race, the polls narrowed pretty considerably, and so it wasn't really even on the list of, you know, close races to watch last night.
And touching on the U.S. Senate seat, I mean, polls were accurate there as well. Tammy Baldwin well ahead of her competitor, State Senator Leah Vukmir. No surprise. surprises there?
No surprises there, although a surprise, from the start of the race, that's one race that people thought was going to be one of the most competitive Senate races of the cycle, but the polls were right at the end. Senator Baldwin won pretty comfortably.
We have about 20 seconds here, and I just want to ask you what you think this all means in Wisconsin for President Trump in 2 years.
Yes.
It makes 2 years really interesting.
Yeah, doesn't it?
I think Wisconsin's again poised to be one of the swing states to watch for in 2020.
Yeah. All right, Eleanor, thank you so much for waking up early and spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Go grab some sleep and some coffee after the early morning, late night.
A little both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. We feel you
Accurate.
on that. All right, thank you again. 6:19 right now. Nearly 24 medical professionals here in Wisconsin could face punishments. The state's looking into how much they prescribe their patients opioids and whether it was too much. We'll share that story coming up.
And we are not expecting it to be as wet outside today, but the clouds and the cold, they're going to stick around. Hattie has an update on how many layers to bring along today when News 3 This Morning returns.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Hattie McLean. Definitely a cloudy start this morning, but no precipitation in our forecast today. Take a live look from the WISC-TV Skycam. Clouds pretty thick across the area. Temperatures are in the low 30s, but it feels even colder when you factor in the wind. This is current wind chill readings across southern Wisconsin. It feels like 20 in Monroe, only 21 in Platteville and Mineral Point, 22 in the Dells. So bundle up as you head to the bus stop today. Temperatures aren't going to move much. We're looking at 33 as you head to school. This afternoon on the way home, 39 degrees. That's all we can muster for a high. It'll still be quite breezy even into the afternoon. Have a wonderful day.
All right, Hattie, thank you so much. We do have some breaking news to share this morning about the crash we've been following on the interstate. The Wisconsin State Patrol confirms that is a fatal crash involving a semi. The accident was called in around 3:45 this morning, according to State Patrol. It is still blocking the right lane of the interstate. This is heading north toward Madison near Newville and Edgerton. Officials cannot say exactly how many people are involved in this crash, but we do know at least one person is dead. We will continue to update you on this story as we learn more. Your time right now, 6:24, and there is another disaster relief center opening in Monroe County today following this summer's historic flooding. FEMA and emergency management representatives will be in Cashton today through Friday, answering questions about disaster assistance programs and handing out information on repairing and rebuilding more flood-resistant homes. That center is on Highway 33 across the street from Cashton High School. The last day to register, by the way, for federal assistance is December 17th.
A handful of doctors, nurses, and dentists here in Wisconsin are under investigation this morning after state regulators say they overprescribed opioids. The State Journal reports 16 dentists, 7 doctors, and 4 nurses are under scrutiny after the state reviewed data from the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. One of those doctors, identified as problematic here in Wisconsin, was prescribing twice as many opioids in a given month compared to the next highest prescriber. Despite that, a new report shows opioid prescriptions have decreased. They're down about 28% from 2015 to now across the state. All right, we are continuing to follow a lot of close races overnight. We're going to have an update on the Attorney General's race, still without a winner this morning, in our live team coverage. That's coming up.
And there is a lot to digest when it comes to these election results, not to mention what could be contested and why. Political reporter Jessica Arp will break that down for us after the break. Thanks for watching News 3 this morning.
bringing education back to the state of Wisconsin. We are bringing science back to the state of Wisconsin. And we are going to bring equality back to the state of Wisconsin.
According to the latest numbers, Wisconsin not only has a new governor, but the first African-American lieutenant governor elected here in the state.
And Tammy Baldwin will comfortably keep her Senate seat. An update on that race and the rest of your election results are straight ahead.
This is News 3 This Morning.
Good morning and welcome to the final half hour of News 3 This Morning. It is 6:29 now on this Wednesday, November 7th, and it has been an early and a busy morning here in the newsroom and the political world following some late-breaking races in Election Day overnight.
Yeah, absolutely, both nationally and here in the state. We'll catch you up on the ones important here in Wisconsin coming up in just a moment. First, though, we want to turn it over to Hattie, who is all sorts of bundled up and rightfully so out on the patio. Hey, Hads.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, I'm grateful for the hat this morning. It's a little windy outside at times and temperatures are definitely cold. Let's take a look at what's happening early this morning. You are seeing a few flurries showing up on the radar map. None of that really hitting the ground here, but there have been some light snow and flurries reported a little bit further to our north across central and northern Wisconsin. We are going to keep the clouds in the forecast today. Temperatures are in the low 30s for the most part across southern Wisconsin. Wind chills are even colder. Here's your forecast as you head out the door this morning. Just remember, it's cold today. High temperatures will stay in the 30s this afternoon. West winds 10 to 20 miles an hour will make it feel even colder. Now look at your first alert traffic maps this morning. There are still major delays on the interstate. This is near Edgerton. A fatal accident there involving a semi has really slowed things down. You want to avoid that area if you can. You can see that the delays are starting to grow there. Here in Madison, no major accidents or delays to report, just a few brake lights on the Beltline at Stoughton Road. But you can see those drive times from Janesville up to Madison. I believe the normal time is about 29 minutes. So you're adding at least 20 minutes right now to your travel time between Janesville and Madison. And that's your first alert traffic.
Yikes, and expect that to get even longer as the morning goes on. Thank you so much, Hattie. We do want to start this half hour with the governor's race because this is coming down to just more than 1 percentage point. The AP is calling the race, saying Democrat Tony Evers has defeated incumbent Governor Scott Walker with 50% of the vote. But it might not be the final say in this race. Josh Spreiter is live at the Capitol this morning with the latest. Hi, Josh.
Good morning, Danica. This was the closest race since 1960, but State Superintendent Tony Evers is declaring victory this morning. The Democrat defeated incumbent Governor Scott Walker with 50% of the vote. Like we just mentioned, it all came down to just over 1 percentage point. Only about 31,000 votes separate the two candidates this morning. That is outside the margin needed for the Walker camp to demand a recount, but Governor Walker has not conceded yet in this race. Governor-elect Evers addressed the excited crowd early this morning.
Although we won Wisconsin tonight, we do so with grace and humility and a lot of happiness, knowing we cannot fix all our problems with any single person or any election vote. The real work starts tomorrow.
Now, there was a time overnight when only a few hundred votes separated the two. Walker's campaign said thousands of ballots were damaged and had to be recreated in Milwaukee County. But once those ballots were in, the margin between the two widened. This morning, Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish says they're not giving up just yet.
And so this morning, I'm asking you to help in the support that we may need in order to fight with that effort.
This is the closest governor's race here in Wisconsin since 1960. It's also a historic vote, with Evers' running mate Mandela Barnes being the first African-American to be elected lieutenant governor in the state. Barnes told supporters this morning that it's time for everyone across the state of Wisconsin to be equally represented. Reporting live on the steps of the state capitol this morning, Josh Spreiter, WISC News 3.
With the governor's race being decided by such a narrow margin, the topic of a recount is already coming up this morning.
That's right, here to talk about it and what might happen over the next couple of days, what that might look like for both Scott Walker and Tony Evers is Chief Political Reporter Jessica Arb. Jess, thanks for joining us. I know it's been a very long night for you. I want to start right away with just the procedure. I mean, what does the law say and what's next for this process in particular?
Okay, so there's a couple pieces to this.
Yeah.
You can't even request a recount until the results are certified at the county level. That usually won't happen until the end of the week. Although all these results we're talking about now are coming from the Associated Press, they're all considered unofficial. They have to be made official in each county, then it goes to the Elections Commission. But the caveat this year that's different is was a law passed in December of, I think it was actually end of November of last year, of 2017, Wisconsin Act 120. It changed how recounts could happen in the state of Wisconsin. You have to be within a 1% margin of the vote to even request a recount in Wisconsin. Right now, we are just above that, but it's possible legally you might be able to challenge some votes. We're not clear right now on what the Walker campaign might do.
Sure.
But that's what would be happening next there.
A lot of uncertainty still. I mean, even with the law changing officially, I mean, it just seems like things up in the air right now.
Right. And going forward in the next coming months, if Tony Evers does take the governor's seat, the state legislature hasn't really changed. It's still red. What is he going to be faced with?
Well, I mean, that's what we're going to see, possibly some partisan gridlock. When you're dealing with two-party control, that's what's going to happen. But before we ever get there, Tony Evers would have to mount a pretty massive transition effort to start government anew with a new party. It's a lot. It's cabinet members. It's all the appointees that go into all of these state agencies. It's then maybe taking a new look at the state agency budgets that they've already submitted. He will have to submit a brand new state budget for the state of Wisconsin. He knows what he wants in his education budget inside and out, but we'd have to look at all these other state agencies. So there's a lot that needs to happen, and it's not clear at this juncture how much work the Evers campaign may have begun doing on a transition effort, given the tight race that they'd been running and the focus that they'd had on get out the vote efforts. It's not clear right now how much work they may have done on that yet.
We will continue to follow the recount process in particular. First and foremost, Jessica, thank you again for all your work overnight and into this morning. We really appreciate it.
We are still waiting to hear who will be the next Attorney General here in the state. With nearly all precincts reporting, Democratic challenger Josh Kaul is leading incumbent Brad Schimmel by nearly 23,000 votes. That's less than 1% of the total vote here in Wisconsin. Both candidates made final remarks before calling it a night. We are waiting to hear from 2 precincts in Waukesha County and 1 up in Barron County. We're going to keep you updated on that race as those votes are counted today throughout the show and over on channel3000.com.
In the race for U.S. Senate, incumbent Democrat Tammy Baldwin easily defeated her Republican challenger Leah Vukmir. Christina Laurie is looking ahead to Baldwin's next 6 years in Congress. Good morning, Christina.
Good morning, Danica. A decisive victory it was for Tammy Baldwin in a state that helped carry President Donald Trump to victory on election night 2 years ago. Overnight, Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin defeated Republican challenger Leah Vukmir 55% to 45%. It was a history-making matchup, the first time 2 women have ever run against each other for a U.S. Senate seat here in Wisconsin. With Baldwin's win, she will head to Washington for her 2nd term. There, the returning senator says she will continue to work to protect the rights of people living with pre-existing conditions, secure better trade deals for farmers, fight climate change, and to do right by workers and veterans. Overnight, Baldwin reminded her supporters their work is not done.
In order to fix what's broken with Washington, and in order to fix what is broken with our divisive politics, you all need to stay engaged. You cannot stop with this victory. You cannot stop because I can assure you that the special interests won't.
The election was called for Baldwin just 4 minutes after the polls closed last night. Vukmir called Baldwin shortly after and thanked her supporters, too.
We ran hard, and we ran as underdogs, and we knew that all along.
Baldwin's campaign outraised Vukmir's by $24 million, but both candidates had support from big-name politicians, with former President Obama stumping for Baldwin and President Donald Trump campaigning for Vukmir. Even with Senator Baldwin's win, Republicans' control of the Senate will grow by at least 2 seats and by as many as 5, with several races much closer than this one in states across the country.
Interesting, though, we were talking earlier, polls accurately predicted the outcome of this race, with Baldwin comfortably winning.
And after 2016, people weren't sure what to expect.
Absolutely. Exactly. We'll see what happens in the next 2 years. All right, Christina Laurie reporting for us this morning. Thank you, Christina.
6:38 right now. There are several school districts that will have the money they need need to build and expand after yesterday's vote? We will update you on that.
The polls show a lot of support for marijuana to be legal in some way, shape, or form here in Wisconsin. We'll share those numbers as well when News 3 This Morning continues. Welcome back. Along with the wins and losses for the governor's office and the state legislature, we're also learning how voters feel about marijuana legalization. In Dane County, there was overwhelming support for legalizing recreational use of marijuana at more than 75%. In Rock County, 69% of voters there said they'd support the recreational use of the drug too. 80% of Sauk County voters supported the legalization of medical marijuana, and more than 3/4 of people in Marquette County said they'd support medicinal use as well. A number of school districts in our area will move forward with construction plans after voters approved referenda asking for more money.
One of those districts is Beloit-Turner's, where the last two requests to raise property taxes and cover a new elementary school actually failed. This time, 57% of voters approved spending that $26.5 million. Edgerton School District got the okay to spend $40 million, most of that going toward renovating the decades-old community elementary school. Middleton Cross Plains, Monona Grove, Oregon, and Poynette all got approval to put money toward new elementary schools as well. And the Wisconsin Dells District has the go-ahead to build a new high school along Highway 12. We have stories on how these results could impact your property taxes over on channel3000.com. A check of your weather is next on News 3 This Morning.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Hattie McLean. It is Winter Weather Awareness Week here in southern Wisconsin, and right on cue, some snow showing up on the radar map. Now, nothing really happening here across southern Wisconsin, but in the central part of the state, there has been some light snow and flurries through the overnight hours. Most of that precipitation, though, is going to stay to our north through the day today. A relatively quiet forecast coming up, at least for the next couple of days. Clouds in place are not going to clear until later on tonight, so clearing probably taking place shortly before or right after sunset. So most of the day will be cloudy today. As high pressure builds in for tomorrow, things stay pretty quiet across the area on Thursday. But Thursday night, this next storm system moving across the plains will sort of merge with another storm system to the south and bring a chance of snow here to southern Wisconsin. We could see a quick 1, possibly up to 2 inches across parts of southern Wisconsin for early Friday morning, and that would impact the morning commute, so keep that in mind. A live look from the Edgewater Skycam this morning. Cloudy skies, wind chills, well, they're a factor today. It feels like it's in the 20s, and wind chills will stay in the 20s and low 30s through the day. Actual high temperatures today, 39 in Middleton, Stoughton tops at just 37 degrees, 35 in Fenimore, Muscoda climbs to a high of 37, Baraboo and Mauston topping at 35. Pretty chilly conditions even here in Madison. We're only looking at a high of 39 degrees this afternoon. It'll stay windy through the day. Temperatures really aren't going to warm up much from there either. We're staying with highs in the 30s. Again, that chance for light snow Thursday into Friday, and then just a very cold weekend ahead. Here's a look at Sam and Marley. I don't know which one's which, but they have both directions covered.
They're on the watch for snow
cute.
is what they're looking for.
Super cute.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you, Hattie.
You're welcome.
The morning sprint's coming up next right here on News 3 this morning. 6:51 time now for the morning sprint. Hattie says it's a pack-your-parka kind of day with another windy and cold day out there. Christina Lori's looking into Senator Tammy Baldwin's midterm victory.
But we start with Josh Spreiter, who's covering the historically close governor's race. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning. Governor-elect Tony Evers is thanking his supporters for showing up big at the polls. The Democrat defeated incumbent Governor Scott Walker with 50% of the vote. It's the closest race since 1960. Just over 31,000 votes separate the two candidates this morning. That is outside the 1% margin needed for the Walker camp to demand a recount. But Governor Walker still has not conceded in this race. Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish told supporters early this morning they will not give up without a fight, saying they'll be looking into a recount. That can't officially happen until the results are certified and made official, which may not be until the end of the week.
Democrat Tammy Baldwin secured control of her Senate seat in a double-digit victory over Republican Leah Vukmir overnight. It was a decisive victory here in a state that helped carry President Donald Trump to victory back on election night 2 years ago, with Baldwin winning 55% of the vote to Vukmir's 45%. Baldwin now heads to Washington for her second term, where she says she will work to fix and improve the Affordable Care Act, secure better trade deals for farmers, and to, quote, do right by workers and veterans. Even with Baldwin's win, Republicans maintain control of the Senate, and that lead will only grow by at least 2 seats and as many as 5.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you, Josh. Less than 1% of the vote separates the candidates for Attorney General this morning. At this point, Democratic challenger Josh Kaul is leading incumbent Brad Schimmel by nearly 23,000 votes. But there has not been a winner called in this race. We will continue to follow it throughout the day and on air and online at channel3000.com.
Speaker Paul Ryan's seat in the 1st Congressional District will stay red. Ryan's former aide, Brian Stile, will take his spot in the House of Representatives after a considerable win over Democratic challenger Randy Bryce. The margin there, about 40,000 votes. On the campaign trail, Stile said his biggest goal is to focus on continued economic growth.
It appears Republicans will maintain a majority in the Wisconsin state legislature. Howard Markline defeated Chris Marion in the state's 17th district. That includes areas of Iowa, Grant, Richland, and Juneau counties. Some thought that Marion had a chance of winning that race. Democrats needed to flip at least 3 seats to take control of the state Senate, and that's not projected to happen.
Third time's a charm for the Beloit Turner School District. It's getting a new elementary school and some improvements for its high school after voters passed its referendum last night. This comes after 2 failed votes in the past. Middleton, Cross Plains, Monona Grove, Oregon, and Poynette all got approval as well to put money toward new elementary schools. And the Wisconsin Dell School District has the go-ahead to build a new high school on donated land along Highway 12. You can read up on how those referenda might impact your property taxes over on channel3000.com.
No precipitation this morning, but definitely a cloudy start to the morning. Take a look at the view from the Edgewater Skycam over downtown Madison. We have mostly cloudy skies. Temperatures are starting in the low to mid 30s, and look at this, not expected to climb much through the day, just a high of 39. West winds will stay strong through the day. That means wind chill is a factor. Wind chills, those readings will stay below the freezing point even into the afternoon. And that's your First Alert forecast.
All right, thank you, Hattie. The president will hold a news conference at 11:30 this morning to talk about midterm results. That is Eastern time. We'll try to stream that live on channel3000.com. He's tweeting a goodbye to candidates who didn't embrace his policies, calling yesterday a, quote, very big win. That is despite the fact that Democrats will now have control of the House for the first time in 8 years. That means Democrats will take over leadership of key committees that could launch investigations of the Trump White House. It could also make it more difficult to pass more tax cuts and changes to health care.
The president also tweeting about the congratulations he says he's getting from foreign allies hoping for trade deals, as Republicans are projected to keep control of the Senate. They actually flipped some seats currently held by Democrats. Some of the noteworthy winners include Mike Braun of Indiana, Kevin Cramer of North Dakota, and Josh Hawley of Missouri. Those are all states President Trump has visited in the past few months.
The midterms are also bringing the most diverse group of candidates to Congress in U.S. history, including a record-breaking number of women on the ballots. A 29-year-old Democrat from New York will become the youngest woman elected to Congress. Michigan elected the first Palestinian America to serve in Congress, and voters in Kansas chose the first Native American congresswoman. On top of that, that, Colorado elected the country's first openly gay governor.
Back in our area, the Wisconsin State Patrol confirms there is a death in a semi-crash on I-90 this morning. Dispatchers got that call just before 4 a.m. Now, that accident is cleared within the last few minutes here, but there still might be backups on your commute this morning. Officials can't say how many people are involved in that crash, but again, we do know there is one death. We'll continue to update you on this story this morning as we learn more.
16 dentists, 7 doctors, and 4 nurses in Wisconsin are under investigation after state regulators say they overprescribed opioids. That's according to the State Journal, which is reporting one of those doctors prescribed twice as many opioids in a given month compared to the next highest prescriber on that list. A new report shows opioid prescriptions in Wisconsin have decreased 28% from 2015 until now.
Tonight, a Dane County committee will take a look at budget amendments after a number of public input sessions. There's a $1 million proposal to add a girls' unit to the county's juvenile detention center, and another amendment to have the county pick up the tab for children housed in detention centers. Right now, their families are charged for each day their child lives there. After amendments are finalized tonight, they go to discussion at the full board meeting on Monday.
All right, 6:57, almost your time right now. As Leah mentioned, that crash on the interstate cleared up. Let's check in with Josh Tim, though, with a look at traffic. Hey, Josh.
Yeah, the DOT has cleared that crash on I-90 westbound at mile marker 165. Still causing some very heavy delays, though, between Edgerton and Newville. Just make sure you plan some extra time. Westbound Beltline picking up between Stoughton Road and West Broadway. It's going to add a minute or two. Inbound John Nolan, you're tapping the brakes near Rimrock and Nolan Avenue moving into downtown. But other main routes heading into Madison, they're still moving at the posted speeds with no major issues. For your first alert traffic, I'm Josh Tim.
Thanks, Josh.
And it is a cloudy start this morning here across southern Wisconsin. Here's the view from the WISC-TV Skycam. Cloudy skies are going to stick with us through most of the day today. Clearing expected later on, but in between, it's going to be a chilly day. Windy with highs only in the upper 30s. Wind chills in the 20s for most of the day.
Yeah. Bundle up and stick with News 3 for the very latest on the Attorney General's race, as well as the very close governor's race. We'll have all of the updates on channel3000.com.